Hey there, Team Reptilians. Thanks for joining us today on Team Reptile. We're actually out at Indian Springs Metro Park, which is located partly in White Lake Township and partly in Springfield Township. And we're out here today to check out a very cool species of snake. A lot of people have misconceptions about this snake. It's actually the Eastern Massasauga Rattlesnake. And it's the only rattlesnake, in fact it's the only venomous snake in Michigan. There are no other snakes in Michigan that have venom or poison. There's a lot of people out there that think there's water moccasins, coral snakes, all these different venomous snakes in Michigan, but really there's only the one, and that's the Eastern Massasauga. And they have quite a few of them out here at Indian Springs Metro Park, as well as in this region here. There's quite a few out at the Shiawassee Basin area, quite a few out in the Clarkson area, usually around the wetlands, and sometimes more of the wooded areas, but they try to stay around those wetland areas, sometimes move up on the hills in the summer, in the drier areas like that. But what we get to do out here today is very exciting because we've actually hooked up with a couple biologists that have a study going here, and these biologists are from Purdue University, which is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they've been doing an ongoing study here specifically on the Eastern Massasauga. They have a couple locations in the state, and this is the one location here in Oakland County that they've targeted because of the population of the rattlesnake here and the diversity of the rattlesnakes that they have here when it comes to the size and the gender. And we've actually got to come out here and meet up with these guys, go around and get a close-up view of these snakes. And just like I said, there's quite a few misconceptions about them. A lot of people think they're a dangerous snake, think that they're aggressive and that they have to be so careful around them. And you do have to show respect for this snake, but it's not an aggressive snake. And we'll get to see some of that today, I'm sure. We're fortunate enough to have with us Joe Sage. He is heading up the Massasauga Rattlesnake study here at Indian Springs Metro Park. And Joe is actually a graduate student from Purdue University. And Joe, could you explain to us a little bit how we are going to track these snakes today?
Sure. Every one of our snakes is implanted with a radio transmitter. It's a small little transmitter about the size of a AAA battery that gets surgically implanted in the side of the snake.
Okay.
And it transmits a continuous radio signal. And we can key into that signal with a radio receiver, which I have right here, and an antenna, which I have right here. And we just use the antenna to locate the signal. The signal's directional, so when you point the antenna directly at the snake, the signal gets louder. When you point it away from the snake, the signal gets quieter.
All right. Okay, well, let's take a look around and see if we can find some. As we made our way out along one of the trails at Indian Springs, Courtney and I searched the edges in hopes of seeing some wildlife. Joe had made his way up the trail a little ways ahead of us and to our surprise had already located one of the Massasaugas from their study. Now Joe has actually already picked up one of the signals of one of the rattlesnakes, so he's going to try to locate it. We're not actually going to walk in with him. And it's not a concern that we have about being bit. It's more of a concern we have about stepping on the snake and injuring the snake. So we're going to allow him to go in first and try to find it, and then he'll let us come in and get up nice and close and take a look at it. You can see how he first uses the radio transmitter to try to pick up the signal, find where that signal is strongest, and then he has to search by eye. He can only get so close with the transmitter, picking up the stronger beeps, and then he's actually going to have to search, use visual search to locate the snake.
Oh, there she is.
Like that.
Right there.
It's actually very hard to see her in here, and Joe's explained this quite a bit to us about how the rattlesnake actually uses more of the motionless, almost like not really a stiffening up, but they'll actually just stay completely still and use their camouflage as more of a protection than they will the rattle. So far, I mean, we're very close to the snake, and it's made no aggressive movements whatsoever. It's not rattling, it's just basically sitting right there hoping to not be detected by it. Aaron, who is Joe's field assistant for the Massasauga study here at Indian Springs, had joined up with us and helped to locate a snake that was trying to take advantage of what little sun this cold morning had to offer so far.
She's going to sit there and pretty much just wait for me to go away. If I get closer, she'd either coil up or move rather than to try to strike at me. And also one of the neat things is they're most aware of the heat. So if I take this and put it behind her, because it's a cold item, she's not worried about that. She's more worried about me because I'm a heat source in front of her.
Now, how is it they sense the heat? It's through the pits there on the...
Yeah, they've got a heat sensing pit between the eye and the nostril. It allows them to sense heat of, like, for rodents and their prey that they would kill, but it also for larger objects that could be a threat to them. She's tongue flicking just to smell around.
While we were all looking at the snake, Aaron noticed something about the rattle.
You can see down here, and about the third segment from the end of the rattle, there is actually a little bit of damage where it's been caved in from, I don't know whether it's hard to tell, it could be a predator, it could just be from habitat it was moving through. But you can see there is a little bit of damage there. It got scraped up a little bit.
Now, of course, our main focus here at Indian Springs is on the Massasauga rattlesnake today, but there's such an amazing amount of wildlife here, and it's just a lot of fun for me just to see the different species that, you know, a lot of times we'll see in some of the areas there out where we do our camps and that, but just to be out here in the open and see this egret out here feasting away on little leopard frogs and little baby frogs and toadlets that are coming out of this pond, which makes me a little bit sad because I love those animals too. But it's really a neat thing for us to be able to watch this and watch nature happen right before our eyes. Now, Joe and I are actually looking around in this spot right here, trying to track one of these, and
Oh, there she is.
which Joe just found it, so we'll go ahead and check her out. Trying to hide under a leaf up here. She's kind of curled up in the ball. We'll get a good shot of her in a minute here, but she definitely is kind of clumped under a leaf and trying to remain undetected, just like all the others that we talked about. So you can see how close we already are, and she hasn't even moved. Just to give you a better idea of how actually reclusive this snake is, Joe and I have actually sat down next to it. I'm about 1.5 to 2 feet away, and Joe is too. It's right in between us right now. Joe's recording the data. This isn't something that he always does, you know, sitting down by the snake, and it's just something we kind of want to do for you at home to be able to tell that the snake is not a real aggressive snake. Joe at times set up on some of the locations that he'll sit down not too far from them. As long as they don't feel threatened, the snake that is, not Joe, as long as the snake doesn't feel threatened, then it's not going to show any aggression. It hasn't rattled, it hasn't done anything other than sat there and tried to remain undetected. It hasn't moved too much. We've seen the nose poke out just a little bit from underneath one of the leaves. just to kind of sense the air and sense the heat that's around it. We talked a little bit about the pits on them. And it just goes to show you that it would take a lot to make the snake be aggressive. For us to be here and it still to try to remain undetected just really reinforces how non-aggressive this snake is, and once again the misconceptions about the rattlesnake. The Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake is strictly carnivorous with a diet consisting primarily of small rodents, especially voles and mice. The rattlesnake's ability to track down their prey using their tongue and heat-sensing pits help to make them a very successful predator within an ecosystem. Joe and Aaron are collecting data right now on one of the snake specimens we just found, and they're actually determining the snake's body temperature, also the temperature of the ground. They measure distances from certain spots to track the location and movement of the snakes, and just some other data that helps them out with their studies and their research.
Little rattle.
Now, Joe, why is she rattling like that?
Well, it could be because there's so many people. There's a lot of vibration in the ground, a lot more than what she's used to, because it's usually just me and Aaron. But it could also be because she's in a fairly open area. She doesn't have much cover. She's probably a little nervous. You know what I've noticed is in the mornings when the sun is shining, like backlighting us.
Yeah.
Basically, all they can see is a big shadow coming at them. They're a little bit more.
Oh,
nervous.
okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely a loud vibration, which is kind of, makes it obvious that they're there.
Yep.
Although this snake seemed a little jittery when we first approached, it didn't take long for it to realize we were not a threat.
Well, you can see when we walked up on her, she started to run because she was scared, but now she's back to relying on camouflage because there hasn't really been any more activity. We're all kind of holding still.
So basically, if we started moving around a lot again, she might start to rattle, but as long as we're kind of just hanging out, she's not going to feel real threatened then?
Yeah. Yeah, her burrow is right over there. Looks like that's where she was heading.
Now, you were talking about the burrows they take over. Is it usually rodent burrows, you said, or?
Yeah, that's what we've seen them been using, is rodent burrows.
That'd be a nice little surprise for
Yeah.
the rodent coming back home. How you doing? When they go into the burrow, they're obviously going to go in head first. Is that burrow big enough for them to turn around in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there she goes, right down in. Something else that Joe and Aaron have to keep track of is the weight of the Massasaugas they have as part of their study here at Indian Springs. We were fortunate enough today to be able to watch Joe and Aaron catch one of these snakes and actually take its weight. Joe and Aaron are actually trying to catch this Massasauga right now. It is a male, and they're trying to bring it up there in order to weigh it so that they can record that data.
Bring them all over the place here.
Now, for their safety and the safety of the snake, they're actually going to put it in the bag. They already know the weight of the bag. So then when they weigh this entire bag with the snake in it, they'll be able to take away the weight of the bag and have the exact weight of the snake.
It's not rattling at all because it's a little chilly out here. Normally this guy would be rattling away at us. He weighs 215 grams.
Okay. And you guys just were looking at the nose too of what he weighed when you caught him, and it was last year that they first recorded the data on it?
Last year in April.
Okay, and how much did it weigh then?
He was 129.
Cool. Quite a difference there.
Yeah.
We hadn't had too much luck on having warm, sunny days for our adventures here with Joe and Aaron, but on this day, it was a whole different story. The sun was really trying to come out, and it was definitely a warmer day than our previous times out. So we were really hoping to have some good luck today. Now, I actually just stepped over, or actually the group of us did. We walked right over a rattlesnake, and it turns out this rattlesnake isn't a part of the ones they've been using for data. And we're trying to locate it again now. Actually, Amy spotted it right after we all stepped over it, and it started to rattle. But it just goes to show you with the habitat here that they can be anywhere, and if they're not one that these guys have on the beeper, we may be walking right over them. So fantastic habitat though. We hadn't walked in much further on one of the deer trails when Aaron and Joe found a very large Massasauga that was part of their study. This one was buried so well though that we wouldn't have known it was there if it weren't for the radio signal.
You can see these hummocks here that stand up in the real thick grass. He just darted right through it and he's just buried inside of it.
Aaron wasn't about to give up though. He was determined to find this snake so he could take a look at it.
Oh, there I see him. See his coil right there? There he is, head pointed at you. There you go.
Hey Aaron, you say this is the biggest snake that you guys have?
Yeah, by far. Previous to this snake, our largest snake by weight was about 230 to 250 grams. This one was weighed right before surgery, and it was at about 437.
Wow.
So lengthwise, he's not like double the length, but he's real heavy bodied and got a large head on him.
About how long is this one?
He is, I think, just under 2.5 feet.
Okay. This wetland area that Joe and Aaron have brought us back to is a habitat that Massasaugas often prefer, which increased our chances of finding specimens from their study, as well as some that might not be a part of their research. One of the Massasaugas we found had a very large rattle. Because the rattles can be so brittle, they usually won't get this big, so this was really cool for us all to be able to see. It definitely wasn't easy for us to spot Massasaugas in this habitat, as their pattern helped conceal them quite well among the vegetation. Their colorful camouflage is extremely important in helping to protect these snakes from their predators, which include different mammals, birds of prey, and even other snakes such as razors. Although Joe and Aaron are the field biologists doing the research here at Indian Springs Metro Park, the Eastern Massasauga Rattlesnakes study covers a much broader area and is actually conducted through Indiana-Purdue University in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Dr. Bruce Kingsbury is the head of this project, and he began the study in part due to the Massasauga's declining population over the years. In fact, Massasauga numbers have dropped so much recently that they are now listed as a species of special concern here in Michigan.
So Joe, how do you tell the difference between a male and female snake?
The male snakes have proportionally longer tails, and they also have wider heads than the females tend to. They also grow bigger. It's kind of a judgment call though. After you've seen a few snakes and you know, looked at a couple, you can kind of have a judge of what sex they are. The only way to tell for sure though is to probe them. Not too much fun for the snake.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of snakes in here, but would we see that many in our own neighborhoods, or?
Probably not. Being as secretive as they are, they tend to avoid the neighborhoods unless it's a recent development. A lot of times recent developments will have snakes start showing up in people's yards if they've recently disturbed a wetland or an old field where snakes go during part of their activity range.
Well, Joe and Aaron were collecting data on one of the rattlesnakes that is part of their data group. We actually found another Massasauga that Amy was stepping right by and looked down and noticed, and this is one that they do not have any data on, and it's just one of the other ones out here enjoying this fantastic habitat and basking in the sun that's finally come out. We've actually come back up to one of the spots where Joe and Aaron had located one of the rattlesnakes earlier, and earlier on, because of the temperature in that, it was burrowed under some leaves. Well, now that the sun's out, it's actually come out to bask in the sun to take in some of that heat. And what's really unique about this snake and the habitat it shows has to do with how barren still this hill is. Usually they like the areas with the cover in that, which it's found some really unique ways to hide by going under just the small clumps of leaves in that. But when it comes to an overall area, it's really not that great for being and remaining secretive. But you can see that we've actually came up pretty close to where this one is. trust me, it's right here on the hill, and it's not making any aggressive movements whatsoever. It's just kind of taking up the sun, realizes we're here, but being extremely timid, not aggressive. We left the rattlesnake on the hill and headed down toward the construction area for the Environmental Education Center that is being built here at Indian Springs Metro Park. We stopped to collect data on a snake that had located itself right inside a construction barrier. I thought it was odd that this snake had chosen to remain so close to the construction, but it turns out that this was nothing compared to where we found one of the other snakes from the study. Joe and Aaron have been telling us about one of the snakes here that's actually moved from the more wetland areas and moved right here into actually a construction zone. And right now they're trying to locate it. They've seen it right around the same area quite a few times. But part of the study that they are doing is actually the effect that the construction and that here will have on the habitat of the Massasauga, and also more importantly how the Massasauga is going to react to the construction going on within its habitat area. So since these Massasaugas have actually moved to the construction zone, do you guys ever get tempted to want to relocate it so it gives it a little more protection, out in a more seclusive area?
Yeah, it's tempting, I mean, with all this activity, there is a good risk that the snake could get killed. I mean, this little strip of dirt here just went in since this snake has moved out here. So, I mean, if he would have been in there, he could have been killed really easily. But
yeah.
It's in terms of our study, it's probably better to just leave them where they are. If there is mortality from construction, then that's an important part of the study.
Okay.
It's an important thing to be able to document.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess overall, if that's what you're looking for, then you have to leave them alone here. After leaving the construction area, Joe and Aaron decided they wanted to head over toward the Nature Center. While they were finishing up recording some of their data, Amy decided to explore the area outside the Nature Center to look for other wildlife. She didn't get to look very long, though, before I roped her into being a part of my rattler demonstration. We've talked a lot about what the Massasauga rattlesnake eats and how they enjoy the rodents for their prey. But what we haven't talked about yet is how they eat, which is kind of cool. Because the common snakes, like the garter snake and that, actually eat a little bit different than what the rattlesnake does. And I'm going to try to demonstrate this as best I can with my hands by using my lovely assistant, my wife. Come on over, Amy. So now what happens is the common garter snake, because they don't have the fangs in that, they just have those little teeth or sometimes no teeth whatsoever. What they do is, this is their mouth by the way, not actually my hand, pretend. They come up to the unsuspecting prey and they bite. And usually what happens is they'll bite down on the head, or if they bite, they'll try to adjust again to get to the head. And then once they have it, and they have it locked in, they actually use their jaws to work its way into the mouth. They expand their mouth like that. They get it in, and they actually bring it down the length of their body using their muscles. But the rattlesnake, on the other hand, they have those two fangs in front. The Massasauga has those two fangs that are hollow, and what it does is it bites the unsuspecting prey with those two fangs. And it usually goes for the rodents in that, which could actually harm the snake. So if it bites them first and injects that venom, then that venom will run through the body, the snake will back off for a minute, and it'll either paralyze or actually kill the unsuspecting prey. So it bites just like that. And injects that venom, but then it'll bite again after the animal becomes motionless, or it becomes paralyzed or dies, like I said. Then it bites again. You're getting a little nervous here. It bites again. It may go for the head, but what it'll do is it actually can retract those fangs or draw them back. So when it grabs, it will draw back and help to pull it into the mouth, where that mouth expands. Pull it in, use those fangs to draw it back, and then use the muscles to bring it down the digestive tract. Remember, that's a rattlesnake.
We decided to come over to the Indian Springs Nature Center to go and check out one of the snakes that Joe and Aaron temporarily house for observation.
I can see that the best way, the safest way to handle this snake is obviously using one of the snake sticks. This isn't something that these guys grab by hand. It's nothing I would grab by hand. This is definitely the safest way for the snake and also for ourselves.
And normally in the wild, if we came up on this rattlesnake, They have a heat-sensing pit between the eye and the nostril. So commonly if you walk up on one of these on the ground and not on the stick, because you are a large source of heat to the snake, it's paying directly attention to you. And you can put the snake stick right behind it, touch the snake with it, and he won't pay attention to it at all because he feels most threatened by the heat source. And typically the head will be poised right at you and not worry about any other cold objects around it, which is one of the reasons the snake stick is nice, because it's not a source of heat, it's actually a cold piece of metal and they don't pay much attention to it, which is helpful when you're trying to pick them up, to weigh them, or anything else.
Now, Joe, how many times a year on average will a rattlesnake shed? And also, when it comes to their rattle specifically, does anything happen with that when they shed?
Well, snakes shed an average of 3 times during the year. Rattlesnakes, the Massasauga in particular, about 2 to 5 times a year, depending on how healthy the snake is. A snake that's eating more and growing faster will shed more times in the year. And every time a snake sheds a skin, he adds a new button to his rattle.
Now, the Massasauga actually uses its rattle as a warning to other animals that may be threatening it, or even to people that may be threatening it. You can see that it actually starts to vibrate. Now, Joe and Aaron have told us that it's kind of ironic because the rattle doesn't work that well in water, but yet they are a wetlands rattlesnake. And one of the reasons that we've actually got to witness it rattling in here is because of the fact that when it is in an aquarium in an unnatural setting like this, it will feel a little more nervous, basically, or a little more threatened because of the habitat that it's in, or the unnatural habitat that it's in. Now, we've actually set up the aquarium so I could crawl underneath, 1 to relax, and 2 to get some shots of the belly. You can see the beautiful coloration on the bottom of it. When he moves, he actually uses the scutes, which are the belly scales, and the muscles that are lined throughout their body will actually contract and help pull it along. When they want to move fast, they can actually kind of throw their body side to side to help propel it faster, but to move slowly across the ground, the muscles will actually contract and expand all along the body to help it propel forward. That was awesome! Not only did we get to see the rattlesnake today in the natural habitat, but now we just got to check it out up close in that aquarium. Got to get a good look at the pits and that on the snake, and why that snake is so distinguishable, the Massasauga that is, why it's so distinguishable from any other snake here in Michigan. So, and I just found out some other really cool news. We get to actually film the surgery when they implant that little radio device in the snake. So join us next time on Team Reptile.